So welcome to the 8th edition of the 2021 Physics Matter Colloquia series, Physics for Development, which is organized by the Forum on International Physics, the FIP, at the American Physical Society. So our live science colloquia are dedicated to a public and to an audience curious to learn more about our exciting scientific world, where physics matter and where the value of collaboration can open new gates for developing community. So together, we want to create a flow of ideas which are both educative and interesting for a broad community. So I invite you to visit our open access FIP website, so to watch and share those precious and previous recordings at your convenience. So today, colloquia are very special to us. So because the first Polarquest edition, the Polarquest 2018, has been our FIP mascot to launch the Physics Matter Colloquia series 1 year ago. So indeed, last November 23rd, 2020, Luisa Cifarelli and Paola Catapano have prepared a very professional recording summarizing the exciting scientific exploration. Polarquest, a sailing expedition to measure cosmic trade and not only beyond the Arctic Circle. So you can find more exciting information at polarquest.org, on Twitter, on Facebook, and Instagram as well, so at Science Adventurers. So we are delighted to have Polarquest Explorer with us to celebrate this 1 year anniversary of Physics Matter Colloquia series. So in some ways, so we are organized as well a Polarquest mini-series in this Physics Matter Colloquia series, in which we will return so next year to discuss the cosmic ray measurement and more ongoing scientific result by Polarquest. So today they will break the ice and stimulate all generations to save the white. So the scientific adventure focus on the environmental issues, on the Arctic environment and the impact of human activities on its fragile ecosystem. So now I will introduce the member of our panel and our speaker. So we have in this framework of Sesame, so we have Andrea Lossi, who is the scientific director of the Sesame Light Source. So for the Forum of International Physics, so my name is Christine Darf. I'm an engineering scientist at the European Spallation Source in Sweden. And I'm also the vice chair of the FIP. So we have Alan Hurt, who is our current chair in Los Alamos, Johnny Mela in the ICTP, and Luisa Cifarelli, so who could not be here, but they are really enjoying with us this first anniversary. So Paola Catapano, that you see here together, so with her team. So she's a science communicator, and she has worked at CERN, which is the European Organization for Nuclear Research in Geneva for the past 25 years. So where she is currently the head of the CERN editorial contents production, which includes the audiovisual production section. And Paula is a science journalist, an Arctic and Antarctic reporters, and the Polarquest 2018 and 2021 project manager. So she has an extensive first-hand experience with production, engaging communication product, conveying complex scientific contents, from particle physics to cosmology and environmental science to diverse audience. So she has hosted, written, and produced a wide range of video products, from short clip to live event, animation, entire TV program, and science documentary, some of which were awarded with international prizes. So Paola's passion is to disseminate science to a wide possible audience. And on a personal note, so she has been also the executive secretary at CERN for the CERN-based Physics Sans Frontières, so where we first met, so at CERN in '96. So when she transmitted this position, so it was a long time ago, Paola. Yeah. So indeed, so Polarquest team includes Kevin Monneron, who is an engineer, a free diver, and a scientific and technical support with a passion for adventure. And Mike Struik, so who is the technical coordinator of Polarquest, and who is an aerian photographer. So Mike is an aeronautic engineer, adventure photographer, Arctic reporter, Delta and drone pilot, and a former colleague as well of mine at CERN some years ago.
Some years ago.
Some years ago as well. So for the logistic, so this is now what we're gonna check. So if you have questions, we can take them while there is this question and answer on the bottom of your screen. And at the end, so we will have the possibility to have some more live explanation about your wonderful trip. So now, without further ado, so we are looking very forward to hearing more about your scientific expedition, and we can come back later on for those questions. So
thank you very much, Christine, for this presentation. We will alternate. As you rightly said, we have double hats in addition to helmets for going underground in the LHC tunnel, like you see in this photo. So the three of us currently work at CERN with different roles, me in communications. And this Polarquest adventure has a link to CERN thanks to the Cosmic Ray Detector program, but is actually an initiative, private initiative. We created an association, and we organize expeditions that are research expeditions and communication expeditions, because we believe in citizen science and we want to share, as you rightly said, with the maximum audience possible. So we are united by this passion for adventure. You can see us in previous expeditions. You can see Kevin pushing away from ice Nanook, the sail vessel that we used in 2018, and you know about, because a whole presentation, like you said, exactly a year ago, was devoted to the adventure of Nanook in 2018. This was Nanook in 2020 in Greenland, where Kevin participated again as support to the scientists on board, and they were packed for a few days in Greenland ice in this photo. And on the other photo, you see Mike and myself. So I've been in Antarctica for a couple of months. This was my first polar expedition in 2005-2006. And this one is taken with Mike in 2014 in Svalbard. So we all have a background of a few expeditions. Just a few words about why it is important to do research at the poles. Of course, it's an exciting trip. It's part of the motivation, but the main motivation is that the poles are a unique natural lab for environmental research, for research in biology, especially marine biology, for glaciologists, for atmospheric chemistry, and so on. The Arctic and Antarctica are the last untouched natural environment, almost untouched, I should say, of the planet. They are uninhabited mostly, and they are crucial for the environmental and for the climate balance of the entire planet. Because being so remote and also so simple, you can see there the effect of climate change under your ice. Both continents, let's say, Antarctica is a real continent because it has a solid bottom under. The Arctic, the pole, North Pole, is pure ice. It's water that is frozen most of the year, less and less seawater. And it's completely different from Antarctica, but they both have an enormous role in keeping our planet's climate balanced. So as soon as you touch one of the very few parameters, ice, atmosphere, water, and the interaction among them, you just tilt the balance. So it's very important to study, but it's also very important to communicate. And that's the core of our expedition, doing research and communicating. As you mentioned, this was Polarquest, 2018. We devoted an entire lecture last year about this expedition, but it's still our inspiration. We organized Polarquest 2018. You can see here an airship Italia. Airship Italia was an inspirer for us, not only because in 2018 it was 90 years, the 90th anniversary after its crash on the Arctic ice, but also and mostly because it was the very first Skylab of history, the very first flying scientific laboratory, and a complete visionary. Umberto Nobile was the engineer who built and piloted the airship, who had conquered the North Pole together with the Norwegian polar hero Amundsen 2 years earlier, but he wanted to return to the Arctic to do science. And he had physicists on board, among whom one of the pupils of Marie Curie, František Beunek, a Czech physicist who was an expert in cosmic radiation, and he had Aldo Pontremoli, who was a colleague of Enrico Fermi, was an extremely good physicist who got lost with the airship. So this is a story that we told last year, but is still continuing as an inspiration for us. In 2018, just quickly reminding our major achievements. One of the top achievements was that we reached on a sailboat a very high latitude, 82°.7 north. So we went across the 82nd parallel. And that's where we saw the first ice, which is absurd and unbelievable because normally the sea ice is much lower than this. It's around the 80th parallel, which we found this year. This year it prevented us from going so far. But in 2018, we could go that far. And we could circumnavigate the whole archipelago of Svalbard. This is the reading on the GPS of the boat of the area. We could go on the exact location of the first SOS launched by Airship Italia and make the very first historical celebration in memory of those who lost their lives there. We tried with a scanner under the boat on one of the mobile dagger boards of the boat to scan the seafloor and see if there were any wrecks left of Airship Italia. We did the northernmost sampling of microplastic right on the polar ice shelf. In the photo that you see, we found a blue plastic piece visible and at the naked eye, which was an achievement, and not a nice one, but an achievement as such that deserved a few publications on plastic. And then, of course, we also recorded the northernmost recording of the cosmic radiation ever done. This is Ombretta of Italian INFN, and she was the physicist on board in charge of the cosmic ray detector. So this was Polarquest, and as Christine reminded, you can still watch the presentation of last year, and we promise you a dedicated presentation on that with Luisa Cifarelli and maybe Ombretta about the results, the scientific results. So I mentioned the detector on board that you can see in the central top photo here. Actually, at the time in 2018, we built 3 detectors were built with the collaboration of students from high schools from Italy, Switzerland, and Norway, just in commemoration of the Arctic trip of Nobile and Amundsen, and Switzerland because we were based at CERN to construct these detectors. And one detector was traveling with the boat. Another detector was based in near Oslo in a school, and another one in northern Italy, Bra, near Torino. And the 3 detectors were functioning simultaneously, taking data simultaneously, because that was one of the main interests of the research program, to look for synchronization, to try to identify a primary cosmic ray that then showers over a large surface. And they were covering quite a few parallels between the latitude of Torino through Oslo till the 82nd parallel. So this was the program in 2018. Polarquest 2021 is in a way linked to that project because we didn't have any detector on board, but we went to visit them. So this expedition was done with a different sailboat, different and similar, because in order to go in the Arctic on a sailboat, first you need an adventurous captain who would accept to do it. There are not many who do that, who just sail to the Svalbard like that. Above a certain latitude, especially, they all stop more or less in Longyearbyen or at the maximum Ny-Ålesund, where the research base is, but then they don't go beyond the 80th ever. So you need a metal hull like Nanook had. This boat also has a metal steel hull, very heavy. It's a record-making boat because is one of the only 2 in the world who did circumnavigate both the Arctic, both through the Northwest Passage and the Northeast Passage, so through Russia, Siberia, and so on, which they did in 2019. And with the boat, we went to visit the 3 detectors that one was on board, one in Torino, one in Oslo. They are now, the 3 of them in Svalbard, in the Ny-Ålesund scientific base. They are put in a triangular, a distance like around a kilometer distance from each other in a triangular shape in order to collect constantly, which they are doing right now. And when we got there, cosmic radiation to study much better the effects of seasonality and the correlation between the various detections. So just to show you the Ny-Ålesund base, this is what it looks like in summer on a nice day, which are rarer and rarer, even in summer. Of course, the photos, we only take them in nice days because in bad days, we have to take care of our security. And second, we have to also try to continue to do our activity and take the boat in a safe place. And this is in May. In May, it's still often snow. This is the so-called King's Fjord or King's Bay. King's Bay, until not long ago, it's on the 79th parallel. It used to be glaciated. It used to be ice and frozen basically all year round. Nowadays, this is no longer the case. It's almost all year round unfrozen. So this is a research base that hosts some 15 countries, and they are permanently stationed there. And it's the northernmost permanent inhabited settlement by humans on the planet. So let's take a look at a little video that I shot in preparation for a movie on cosmic rays, where I tell about the 3 detectors and where they're based and what they're doing.
So, and after a voyage of 3,500 nautical miles on Nanook, the Polarquest #1 detector, the one that took the trip with us on the sailboat, has found its permanent locations here, together with the 2 others. This is the Italian research station at Ny-Ålesund on the 79th parallel, a very wide location. The northernmost inhabited permanent community. It's a research base, international research base. And we are on top of the Gruvebadet lab. It's the chemical atmospheric lab of the Italian research station. So one of the 3 detectors is right here under my feet. The other 2 are located at 1 kilometer, more or less, distance. One is at the research base down there, the Reggibile Italia research base. Right there what you see is a research village with many research bases from 12 different countries, including India and Korea, not just European. The one that took the trip with us on Nanook is at the Amundsen Nobile Climate Change Tower. That's a permanent research installation on climate change, installed here by the Italian research base, but available for every researcher. And we are going to take a look at the 3 of them. The 3 detectors are now working simultaneously, taking cosmic muon data since May 2019, and they will do for quite a long time.
So we visited the detectors to take a look at them and to see how they were doing and to do a little film. I just mentioned in the stand-up, you can see the 3 locations. This was where I was in the film. You can see me and the cameraman, Christian, who was filming me. And the detector is inside the chemical atmospheric lab. Then you have another one here inside the little control hut of the climate change tower. And this is the one that was on board with us. So I pointed at the sticker of our expedition 2018. And then the other one is in the Italian base, in the place where they allowed us to connect with internet, because of course, above a certain latitude, there is no more internet, no more phone reception. You only have satellite phone with very limited bandwidth. And now I give the floor to Mike. Yes, to Mike, who is going to tell you about what it takes to organize such an expedition and the logistics of it, where we were exactly. So Mike, floor is yours.
Okay, just change the height a little bit. Okay, so coming back a little bit, maybe on the poles. Here on the left, you see the Arctic Circle with the North Pole. Paola already mentioned, North Pole is an ocean surrounded by land, contrary to the Antarctica, which is a piece of land surrounded by water. That's the main difference. And here you can see that we're quite far above the, does the cursor work? Yes. Above the Arctic Circle, Svalbard archipelago, also called Spitsbergen for Dutch people like me. And you can see that it's close to the 80th parallel, which means there are 10 degrees missing to get to the North Pole. And since 1 degree is 60 minutes and each minute is a nautical mile, this is about 1,100 kilometers from the North Pole. On the other image, Paola already mentioned a number of settlements. So on Longyearbyen, we have the main city, let's say, large village with about 2,500 people. There's another small city called Barentsburg, an old city bought from the Russians by the Dutch, where there's about 500 people. And then there's the research facility in Nyalesund, a bit 100 kilometers north, where there are between 30 and 120 people, depending on summer, winter. The other settlements that you can see crossed out, they are no longer in use. So they are basically abandoned, which makes for interesting exploring as well, of course. So here's the location, where we are. How do I continue? Okay. And we can see the routes. So just as a reminder, in 2018, we left from Iceland. We had a little stopover in Greenland before we made a quite long crossing to get to Svalbard. And on the blue circuit that you can see here in 2018, we managed to get around Svalbard, and we even managed to go quite north. Paola mentioned it before, 82 degrees, which is quite far up. And then around Noord-Oostlandet and back to Nyalesund, back to Longyearbyen, which is always the starting and stopping point for all trips to Svalbard. In red, you see the trip we did this summer. It's not that long ago, it's still fresh in our memory. We left this time from Norway, Tromsø, to Longyearbyen again. This is about 4 days non-stop sailing, 4 times 24 hours. And as you can see also, this time the trip ended in this area because, of course, this time we were not so lucky as in 2018. We were stopped by the ice. So unfortunately, we had to return. Well, unfortunately, in the sense that we hoped to go back to the airship area to do some more scanning of the floor, of the sea floor for finding the airship, but we couldn't do that. So on this side, you see the trip we did. Longyearbyen, always the first port where you go, Nyalesund, saying hello to our science friends. And as of Nyalesund, we have met nobody else. We went, as soon as we went north of the 80th degree, we didn't meet anybody else. In total, we spent 36 nights on the boat. So quite a long trip in quite difficult conditions. As I said before, we had ice, and also the weather was less good than in 2018. So when can you organize these kind of trips? It's the Arctic. So of course it has to be in our summer. August is a good month since we have 24 hours daylight. Unfortunately, ice is possible. In 2018, as you can see on the ice maps, we were lucky. There was no ice, neither in August, this is middle August, nor in September. This year, we were not so lucky. We in fact went a bit too early and we encountered the ice right here. This is the map of middle August 2021. And in fact, the ice only disappeared around middle of September. So even if we had stayed 1 or 2 weeks longer, it would have been too early. Or in fact, this year it would not have really been possible to go where we wanted to go. So August is a good time to go because of the daylight, but there's a risk of ice. September is a good time to go as well. There's less ice, but there's also less daylight. And eventually there are more storms. Another constraint we had this year was the COVID, of course, with Norway being quite strict and very closed. In fact, the day that we left to Norway was the day that they accepted our Swiss vaccinations. So we were quite lucky from that point of view as well. Just a little reminder of the conditions up there. This is a sun graph for Longyearbyen. And you can see from May to August, there's 24 hours daylight, something you have to get used to. And you can see for September already, middle of September, there's some parts which are partially dark, a bit more difficult to sail in. So the sailors don't want to stay till September. We would have liked to find a compromise, but the compromise we found was to go in August. Little animation, if I can point out to Svalbard here. This doesn't show the variation over the season. This shows only the minimum ice each year. So starting in the 80s till 2020, you can already see that not every year it's possible to circumnavigate Svalbard. In fact, most years you can't until about here, 2010. Every few years, if you're lucky, if you find the minimal ice, you can circumnavigate, but not all the time. In 2018, which is this one, we managed to get around. 2021, we didn't.
You can with an icebreaker.
Well, Paola just mentioned that you can with an icebreaker, of course, but that's not the kind of expedition we were trying to do. Icebreakers also have much more depth. How do I get out of this? Okay. So that leads us to the equipment. In fact, here you have all the kinds of transport that you can imagine in Svalbard. You have the sailboat that we took, the Best Explorer. In the background, you have a more older sailing ship, which is mostly used for tourism. And then you have like this intermediate sized research ship, which has its advantages, but it also has disadvantages because we are looking for very little depth in order to be able to go close to land and to go north of 80 degrees where the seafloor is uncharted. So basically you don't know how deep it is. Paola also mentioned already that we like to have metal sailboats. Metal sailboat, little depth, you get about this kind of size of boat, 15 meters long, 51 feet. And this also means that the places on board are quite restricted. This boat is made for 12 people. There are 5 cabins of 2, 4 cabins of 2 and 1 cabin of 4. But in practice, with all the scientific equipment we took, we had only 10 places available. So we were restricted to 10 people. And the same boat, of course, can bring, has to be quite independent for the trip. So we had food for 6 weeks, fuel for 2,000 liters for about 2,000 miles, depending how much you sail and how much you run in the engine. In the Arctic, you find that you have to use the engine more often than you think, which is about 50 to 75% of the time you use the engine anyhow. We had quite a lot of water on board, 1,600 liters. But if you divide this by 10 people and six weeks, this means in practice that you have only 4 liters per person per day available, and that includes cooking, drinking, and washing. The boat has a tender as well that you see up here, an annex to bring us to land, very important. On this photo, you don't see it because it's still uninflated, it's still lying on the deck. And the spare tender if something goes wrong. I come to that later. I will talk a bit about polar bears. And then, of course, on board, we need to bring the scientific equipment, which is limited in space. There's quite some contradiction between what the scientists would like to bring and how much space there is on board. So in practice, we'll have a boat with 2 expert crew, a captain and a skipper. There's the 3 of us from Polarquest doing various tasks. There's space for 4 scientists. And then we ended up with 1 space left, for which we were hesitating between the medical doctor and a filmmaker. And in the end, we chose for the filmmaker, or well, the situation made that it was the filmmaker that came and not the doctor. So here's a quick list of the people. I think I'll just leave it as such. Kevin later will introduce the scientists. So there's the skipper and the co-skipper. Skipper, very experienced person. He did the Northwest Passage with this boat. Co-skipper, also very experienced and a very good cook. Very important for these kind of expeditions. There's the 3 of us. Christian is a freelance filmmaker who came with us. There's the 2 Swiss scientists, Crystal and Elias. Kevin will go into that a bit deeper. Gianluca, who came with us in 2018. He's our geographer and drone pilot. And this time a new scientist, Dominique, who's a marine geologist, who was also the operator of our Norbit scanning equipment. So just for those who maybe cannot really imagine how it is to be on a sailboat in the Arctic, I'll show you a little shot what it looks like on a, let's say, mediumly rough day. Here's some images from cabin. And if you can hear me at the same time, there's Paola and me. So there is Paola and me inside the cabin. The difference between this boat and the previous one, Nanook, is that this one was a bit better protected for the weather, which was quite comfortable. Okay, I have to go on here. Sorry. So the same from inside the boat looks like this. And you can see the hatch, the entry point, which gave us the difference between inside the boat and outside the boat. So maybe some of you will wonder how life is on board, 10 people on a 15-meter long boat. This is a typical meal. We took the meal usually all together on the same table. Okay, Karen just points out to me there's a bottle of whiskey over there. Yes, that's also part of the expedition, of course, but we had most of our meals, all of us together on this table, and getting along with 10 people that all have the same interest is in the end not so difficult. I mean, it's less difficult than you can imagine. We had other difficulties. The difficulties were more outside the boat. Okay, coming back to preparation. We cannot just go to Svalbard like that, especially not in the COVID period. On the map here on the right, you can see what the Norwegians did to the island. So in green, you have national park. In pink, you have nature reserve. And then in blue, you have areas where only people can go for research. In fact, only the area around Longyearbyen, this area is open for tourism. And all the other areas, you need the various permits. Of course, we had to go to the most difficult area up here, which means we needed permission from the Research in Svalbard, which is an institute that follows all scientists that give you the permit to do science. You have to liaise with the local police, which are called Sysselmannen, to get outside this tourist zone. And you have to explain them where you're going and show them your equipment and things like that. Give them your satellite phone numbers. For Svalbard, I'll come back to this later. You need to have a weapons permit to protect yourself against the polar bears. This permit is more and more difficult to get because as of this year, you need to prove your experience with weapons, which we got in 2018. So that was handy for us. And then, of course, we need the permits for the drones, to fly the drones. That's more easy because nowadays the Norwegians are following the European rules, so we can use our European normal flying licenses. Polar bears, how are we at the time? We're fine. Polar bears. Everybody knows about polar bears in the north, in the Arctic. When you arrive on Svalbard, the panel on the left is what you typically see, but these animals really exist. They walk around the island. Here's a picture that I took of a female and a small cub. This is the same cub eating a seal. It's a 1-year-old cub, so you can imagine how big the adult of the father would be. So just a little reminder about bears. They are predators. They can be pretty heavy. They stand 3 meters high when they stand on their hind legs. They can outrun you. They can outswim you. They can outclimb you. And they want to eat you. So it's not ideal, and we're not used to this kind of situations. And then on top of it, when you do the polar bear protection courses on the island, they teach you that bears are dangerous, whether they're females, whether they're small, whether they're females with cubs, whether they're adolescents, inexperienced, or whether they're old males, especially when they're skinny. So all the bears are dangerous. The danger is in not only in one direction. You realize a bit better when you spend a bit more time there. Of course, you want to be protected against bears, but if there's an incident or the bears get too close, they get shot. And this is a situation that you really desperately want to avoid. I mean, you don't want to be attacked, but you also don't want to kill a bear. Here's a picture of an incident that happened while we were there with another group of people in 2018, where one person got hurt and one bear got killed. So then to the bit more spectacular part for these kind of trips, polar bear protection, which you must prove that you can do and for which you need the weapons. So there's different levels in what you do in a kind of a bear encounter. Of course, you try to avoid any encounter. If you see a bear on land, you don't go on land. It's as simple as that. If you see a bear far away, you go away. So the first thing to do is to observe, to look around. Typically, when you're on a boat, you use the binoculars to have a look. And when you land on the beach, you use a drone. We call this little drone on the left there, our little bear drone. We use it at every landing to look around and be sure there's no bear hidden behind a rock or something like that, or behind the driftwood, which on top of it is also white, like the bears. So that's the first thing. But if you have an encounter, there's a number of rules. I'm not sure whether we would really follow these rules in case this would have happened, but you need to stay grouped. You need to make yourself bigger. And then you should use different means to scare the bear, and you have to be able to increase these means, meaning that you can start by talking to them and then maybe go up to screaming at them or making some noises. We also were carrying flare guns that shoot a little kind of a little grenade that explodes in preference in front of the bear, not behind the bear, because he might run away towards you. And then we had to carry these pretty heavy Second World War rifles that you can rent on the island with a high caliber in case you get attacked, which is of course something you really, really want to do as a last resort. So the rules on the island are when the bear is closer than 30 meters and attacking you straight, that's where you should and you can defend yourself. Whenever a bear is shot, the police will come and have a look at the situation. If you shoot a bear in non-self-defense situation, you get fined. They are protected animals over there. Another photo showing Kevin here on Polar Bear Watch. So whenever we went on land and the scientists did their job, the two of us, we always had to be out watching over the scientists who were maybe less aware of their environment than we had to be for them. Okay, last word on equipment. Expeditions bring a lot of equipment, bring a lot of stuff. So we could bring our personal equipment, photo, videos, drones, communication equipment by plane. There was a big box that we had shipped from CERN. That box has a long history and it arrived just in time for the expedition. So that was quite stressful. Contained all the scientific equipment and the diving equipment of Kevin. We'll come back to that as well. Kevin, who was also our free diver. And then locally, we could rent the rifles, the ammunition, the flare guns, and iridium phones, and do the shopping, the food, the fuel, the water, locally, meaning we could do it in Tromsø before leaving Norway, in Longyearbyen, and partially in Ny-Ålesund as well. And with this, I give the word to Kevin, who will introduce the scientists.
Exactly. So we had 4 scientists on board, and I will speak about a bit all the science we did. So we had 2 scientists, Elias and Christelle, who went with the Swiss Polar Foundation to do eDNA, environmental eDNA studies and greenhouse gases. We had Dominique, who did from Gdansk University, who did the bathymetry. So it's a marine biologist. And we had Gianluca, who is from University of Rome, and he did the 3D mapping with the help of the drones. So the first area that I want to talk about will be Lillehaugfjord, when we did the eDNA project. So eDNA, we did this to study the health of the biology, and we did it with techniques with non-invasive and really innovative, because it lets you the possibility to analyze by the trace of the eDNN all the species who pass in an area and in the environment. And with these techniques, you are able to know without taking them, without taking the animals, and so it's quite innovative. So we use two types of tools to do this. We use the probe, a CTD probe. So with this probe, we are able to know at which depths we have to take the sample of waters. And we use to capture the water where you have the eDNA inside, this kind of tools with Niskin bottles. So to study this Lady Franklin fjord, we split it in different stations. So we did 6 stations, one super close to the glacier. So when you do science here, so it's quite impressive because you can hear really the sound of the glacier because it's an active glacier. And when it moves, it makes the sound of thunders. So really close to outside of the fjord, to give really a full range of observation of the biodiversity on the fjord. So this is the kind of information you can extract from with the CTD probe. So you have the information from close to the glacier to far to the glacier, and we can have different kind of information like temperature, salinity, and chlorophyll, for example. And chlorophyll, it's quite important because it will give you information where you have to go, at which depth you have to go to take the sample of waters. So how we do this? So here a small clip of the Niskin bottle installation. So you can see on the first one that it's open. So we prepare it, this Niskin bottle. We will place another one on the same rope. We will go at the depth that we select. And after we will send on the rope a weight, and this weight will hit the first Niskin in the water to close all of them. And after this, we just have to bring them back on the boat, and we captured at the right depth the sample of water. Okay, and after all these samples will be analyzed by University of Geneva. And the other study that we will carry, we carried there, it was greenhouse gases. So it was greenhouse gases. It's how to extract in the water 2 types of important gases were responsible for the climate change. So it's methane and CO2. So to have really precise data, you have to do a lot of samples. So we did it all our past. And so you can see all the green point that we did. So how you do this? You have to extract these gases from gas from the water. So you have to check a lot the water, and you will be able to separate these gases, this gas. And after you have to put them in a small tube, and we will have to analyze them as well soon. The second study that we did, it was in Lady Franklin fjord. So in Lady Franklin fjord, to reach this point, it was quite hard because we passed in an uncharted area. Because as said Mike, when you pass the 80th parallel, you have no map after. So that's why it's totally blue here. And above this latitude, you have nothing, no map. So for example, to reach this point, we had to open a path, and I can show you as well a small clip. So what we can see.
Così.
How much deeper?
20 meters on this side, 70 meters on this side. It's extremely steep. See how it is? I'll try to reduce.
So you can see that we have two types of screen. One is just information about the depth, so with the scale of colors. And the other one is really interesting because you can see really the seafloor. So if you have enough experience, you are able to have some information about the type of the seafloor, if it's a sand, if it's a rock, but as well, you are able to identify some work, for example. So we reach this Lady Franklin fjord. So as I said, it's quite hard to access. So now with this path that we opened, we will be able to give this information. We will arrive on Google Earth, and that will let provide really gold information for the rest of people later. So it was Lady Franklin's Fjord. I will show you the sonar. So you can hear as well the sonar, the sound needed in the water, in orbit. And now I will show you the type of map we can see we are able to do with this when we will do a lot of path. So you can see by the scale of color the depth of the area. So the glacier was there, and you can see as well the strip. And this gives information of all the movement did the glacier when he moved back. This as well is quite interesting because you have here the prediction done based on satellite observation. So they can try to predict the depth of the water. So they predict 25 meters, but you can see that it's not really accurate prediction, because when we passed, we had the path when it was more than 100 meters. And so we talk about strip, but we have as well some interesting other point, or could be drop of sediment. And when you have this, it's quite rare. So the scientist was really interesting to go there, to have the possibility to sample this drop of sediment. So when you are in this kind of environment, you have the possibility to take a drone, but we didn't, or to send someone. So I did a free dive in this cold water. So it was water at 0 degrees, and it was 13 meters deep. And I will bring you with me for a little dive. And you will see that it was not really expected about the visibility. So I go down and I start to realize that I will see nothing, even if it's 24 hours sun outside. So I touch the floor without knowing it. So I just feel with my hand. So I took the samples in my hand, and I get back to the top. It was a bit scary. So I try to put it in the right position to not lose it. And I get back to the surface with all the crew on board. And that's it for my part.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Just to say, the Swiss scientists were supported by the Swiss Polar Foundation. The eDNA samples are currently being analyzed, and they are part of the master thesis of Elias Meyer of the ETH Zurich. And the greenhouse gases sample are being analyzed by the University of Geneva, the Marine Lab of the University of Geneva. And now I give the floor again to Mike, who will present the 3D mapping research with the drone. I didn't mention the sonar scanning. It's University of Rome, European University of Rome, with Gdańsk, Poland University. Voilà.
Okay. A few words on using the drones for science. So I already mentioned the little drone that we used for looking for bears. Of course, one of my tasks on board was to make the nice, beautiful images for eventual documentaries with the drones. But the third use for the drones is mostly done by Gianluca, is for science. So this is some of his slides that I stole from him. We use the slides for mapping of environmentally relevant sites, as he describes it here, documenting geographic documentation of status of certain sites, and archaeological monitoring, if possible. On this specific picture, it's quite interesting. In the middle here, the little garbage patch you see here is in fact an old Nazi weather station from the Second World War that was abandoned and set afire. You can still today see the remains of that time, and we decided to, after our visit already in 2018, we decided this year to do a proper mapping of that area using the drones, especially also because you're not really allowed to walk through the center of this historic site. Oops, I'm going backwards.
Use the keyboard,
Okay. So we're talking about UAV mapped research, blah, blah, blah. How does it look in reality? Is that we use commercially available drones like this one. And we send the drone up and down and let it take pictures from top down. In the case of Gianluca, here operating his drone, since he lost his in 2018 and he was scared to lose it again, he attached his drone to a tether. So poor Dominic had to carry like a fishing rod with a cable and had to keep the drone in rain in case it wanted to fly away. The reason this drone is maybe not so reliable in this area is because of the compass that doesn't work so well in the north. And also when I flew with my drone there, it often wanted to lose the direction, and with that the GPS, and then you have to fly it basically manually. So this is how it looks like. We operated the drones for a few hours or for as long as the batteries would last, taking pictures top down, which then result in what you can see here. You can see quite some details. This is the Nazi station with some probably fuel or oil barrels. You can see wood, you can see crates. If you go a bit closer, you can find shoes and kitchen utensils and things like that. So that's the orthophotography. But if you analyze this data, even from just top-down pictures, you can do some 3D modeling. And this is already 3D modeling done directly on the laptops on board. You can see that this whole place becomes a 3D model based on the photos taken from top down, which means from different angles, in fact, as well. Okay, here's another example where we use the drones for complete mapping of a little island called Hansoya. The white areas here are snow. The white areas here means that the drone pilot didn't do his work properly. Basically, we forgot to cover a piece of island. Normally, this drone mapping is done with software that automatically overlaps and monitors an area very precisely. But since the drones are not so reliable in this area, we have to rely on our vision. So we manually fly the drone and manually overlapping lines like that. And then we hope that we don't miss anything. This island is about, I think, 1 kilometer long, and this is done over 2 runs of a few hours, I would say. Another use is for environmental monitoring. Here's a beach on La Goya, beautiful island, very flat, mostly consists of stones. What you see here, all these little sticks, is driftwood. And if you go a little bit more in detail, you can see the driftwood, but you can also unfortunately see the plastic, in this case, mostly fishing gear. And with these kind of pictures and a bit of artificial intelligence tinkering, you can extract how much plastic is to be found scattered all over these islands. We had one more specific use for the drones, which was thermal mapping. This is a beautiful area called Bokfjorden, where there's several fields with thermal activity. We visited one in 2018, which this year was no longer visitable. It's forbidden to go to. So when you're in the Arctic on the boat and in the cold all the time, you can only dream of a thermal area. Unfortunately, the thermal area turned to be out 24 degrees warm. And very small and protected, so you cannot even enter it. So all we could do is just observe it with the normal cameras, but also in this time we attached the thermal cameras to the drone. And with this, I give the word back to Paola, who will talk a little bit about the plastic.
Yes, this was the last but not least important scientific project on board. So as Mike mentioned, on La Goya, which is an island right on the 80th parallel, a beautiful island, looked like a different planet. Each island is different in the archipelago, but the closer you get, especially to the driftwood, the more plastic you find. And the association of plastic and driftwood was the peculiarity of the research project we did this year, both with the European University of Rome of Gianluca, but also with the CNR, the Italian Research Council Marine Institute in La Spezia. And they wanted us to study, to collect samples of driftwood associated with plastic. Basically, every piece of plastic there is associated with driftwood. This shows a little bit what you see of La Goya at first sight, but then when you get closer, that's what you find. This particular object had an Italian inscription, non disperdere nell'ambiente, do not disperse in the environment. And it made its way here, God knows how. So one way of understanding how plastic accumulates in the Arctic is to follow its pathways and to study the driftwood that comes with the plastic, because by documenting this, you can study the accumulation dynamics, the timings, and if possible, the drifting paths of the plastic. Then you can also apply some GIS documentation with the drone photography. And then by applying artificial intelligence, you can, of course, also get back to the kind of composition of the plastic and understand where it comes from. Of course, the marine currents are pathways for plastic accumulation in the Arctic. Nobody lives there except for some polar bears and other marine animals and a lot of birds. So nobody removes the plastic. And because most of the year these areas are under ice, it stays there. But staying there means that it damages the environment, and it does that very seriously. Not just macroplastic is not just ugly to see and spoiling the beautiful place, but mostly when it becomes microplastic, that is under 5 millimeters, it can get, and it does get, into the organisms of marine species and local species, including birds, and it damages their DNA. It gets down to the bottom of the marine food chain to the zooplankton, which means basically it's a threat for the entire life on our planet. So these are some beautiful images of driftwood. Of course, in Svalbard, there is no plants except some lichens in more south, but there are definitely no trees. Never have trees been documented there. So every piece of wood or trunk that arrives, it's either a natural log or even artificial wood, and they all get there from the sea. What we did with Crystal, we collected some plastic samples, and then, of course, with gloves, taking the GPS point. But then also we did some wood collection. We had to cut the wood because we couldn't bring the entire log. So we cut a few centimeters of wood. And all this wood is going to go to the Marine Research Lab of CNR ISMAR to study better the accumulation dynamics of plastic in the Arctic, and in particular in Svalbard. So the expedition, we covered very briefly and not in detail all the scientific projects. We will be very glad to cover with a specific presentation the scientific results in a year. It would be ready. I just wanted to mention that we had a lot of scientific partners, as I said, the Swiss Polar Institute with the University of Geneva and ETH Zurich. We also had the Italian Geographical Society and INFN that I didn't mention, ISMAR and the Geographic Lab of the European University of Rome, and the Dansk partner. But we also had a commercial partner, Save the Arctic White Blanks. It's a tooth whitener that was looking for a small size scientific expedition to associate them with. And they found us and they proposed a partnership because their product, this tooth whitener, is based on research carried out in Iceland on a lichen. And the product is based on this natural whitener. So last but not least, if you want to know more, we have a lot of material on our website. You can follow us also on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at these addresses. And we thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this very exciting tour. And it was not even cold, but really the sense on how important everything is there as well to master this ecosystem. So thanks a lot for everything that you're doing there. I see that we have one question here. So from Axel. Should I read it? Maybe Axel, yes, do you want to have the voice? So I will read it first and maybe he could speak later on. So, so this is a great expedition and very interesting webinar. So are you planning other expedition? It will be, so he will be working in Dieska, so the radar station, so which is located in Spitsbergen, as per next year. So he's hoping that it will be the case. So it's if there is any other expedition you would like to join on the boat for dinner, so maybe as well as a positive scientific study for the future work that would look for the offshore fresh water under the sea floor, like the project, and he gave there the URL for this project. So I think do you know maybe about this seafloor mapping as well?
It was part of our also what we did, because the reason why you go so close inside a fjord, so close to glaciers, is exactly also to study the intrusion of fresh water from the glacier to the sea bottom, which does change the interaction between the sea, the atmosphere, and it is also a game changer, both for biodiversity in the case of eDNA, but also for climate studies, of course. So next expedition is always difficult to answer this question when you're so close to ending your expedition. We do this in our holiday time. We have full-time jobs at CERN. It would be fantastic if you could do that every day. And in that case, the answer would be yes, but it depends on so many things and many opportunities, and also the amount of work we have to do in our daily jobs and the amount of energy that is left to organize this expedition. Of course, we jump on any opportunity we see. This time it was Blanks who asked me after the projection of our documentary from 2018, they asked me, are you planning to do an expedition? And I said yes, without absolutely having done any plan, just because I saw the opportunity for them to sponsor us. And then when we found that the agreement could function, I put together the expedition, looked for a boat, put together a bunch of scientists. Of course, there are lots of scientists looking for small-scale expedition like this one, because they are much more flexible. They can go much further, much closer to land than with the big icebreaker or even medium-sized icebreakers that are usually organized seasonally. There's a big advantage in small sailboats that they can approach the coast, and they can go in uncharted waters because the keel is low and is movable. So that's why there is a trend. And every time we went, there were always scientists that we met, for instance, at the research base, and said, oh, can you go and check for my probe? You are passing by there, because nobody goes there. So voila. I see another question. Plastic, is there any evidence that some plastics will degrade the Arctic in finite time? UV thermal, of course, there is evidence. That's why there is this kind of research. There is definite evidence that plastic enters the DNA and the blood flow of living organisms, and especially microorganisms, and changes everything, changes their growth parameters. They get cancer. This is documented. And the documenting is continuing just to see what are the effects, but also to see what one could do. But that's the reason why there is so much talk about plastic in the environment. And it's not just in the water, it's also in the air we breathe. Because plastic is eternal, it never degrades, it's not biodegradable, and is produced in enormous quantities. And the curve is now vertical, the production curve. So it's one of the planetary emergencies, and we need to do something to stop that. Plastic production.
Plastic production, or to change, looking at the biodegradability as well.
Yeah, but biodegradable is fine, but it's not happening. And also recycling, recycling is also not happening as much as one believes. Only very low percentage of plastic is really recycled. Most is in the sea and incinerated, and everywhere you look, in the soil, everywhere, in the atmosphere, whatever you study, you find plastic.
Yeah, and this is the big issue. So I guess that one of the things really for the global warming and for everything, looking at the climate change, this is really to change this potential endangering of the planet because of the plastic and light source there. This is why we have the Sesame potentially, or the ESS. So it's getting some understanding in terms of how this biodegradable plastic can be sustainable as well for a bigger production or massive production. But yes, this is a big challenge. It will be like, how can we live without plastic? We're trying, politically speaking as well, to have or enforce as well those no plastic from the supermarket in Europe, but it's not the case in America. So it has to be like a common agreement. So and
not just, it has to be, what we want to do is to wake up the sensitivity of people. It has to be a bottom-up process, because it is difficult. It is difficult not to buy plastic. Packaging is full of plastic. Everything is full of plastic. It has to be a conscious effort when you go to do your shopping. try to avoid it yourself and choose the products that have that have no plastic, like any produce, that any consumable produce, fresh products, buy them like that and put them in your own bag, in your plastic bag, but that you will use for 10 years, not a single-use object, and avoid single use as much as you can. This is already will be a game changer. And then the regulations will come, but at the moment everybody's focusing on decarbonization. But plastic is as important, and we cannot wait for laws coming from up. We have to do a bottom-up reaction. There is a question that I think the best placed person to answer is Kevin from Faikal Barzi. So a question to these amazing explorers. First of all, you showed a great deal of courage and bravery. How could someone volunteer? This is for you.
For me, for example, it was something that I dreamed when I wanted to do from my childhood. So it was not difficult to volunteer, but how to do it, you have to probably do other projects. For me, I was starting a project with EPFL when I did sampling from different lakes for study the climate change, but in the area of Switzerland. And after I was interested about the presentation you did in the globe at CERN, and I met both of you. And after I decided to be volunteers. You took me, so I'm super happy.
Well, exactly. Last year we gave you the opportunity to go on board Nanook. And it was extremely useful on board. I mean, no tourists on board. People that come have to do not just one job, but many jobs at the same time, because the space is so limited and you need to do so much that basically you almost never sleep. You work around the clock.
Yeah. You need to be
fit.
You need to know a lot of different things, but you can learn things on board. For example, sailing. Yes. I was not at all a good sailor, but I had all the skills like diving skills, or I was resistant to fatigue. So this is, I don't know, but this is quite important. And as well, for me, what really important thing is you have to be able to live in a small space with a lot of people in a long period. So this is, I think,
and not in the Caribbean, in a place where
exactly, it's quite cold, but you have to keep smiling all the time, even when it's hard. And this is quite interesting.
Yeah, very good. And indeed, as you said, so this multifunctionality, this is as well what Matt was mentioning, and to have to choose between somebody for the film or somebody being a doctor. And finally, so you have somebody that could do both, so who could do
exactly.
both.
The more you have skills, better is, of course.
You can, and you have to be the sailing skill, but as well the diving skill. And this is one of the things that is a complementarity.
I did as well greenhouse gases last year. So
he supported basically all the research that was from the sea, let's say.
So as well, so to connect as well to the first question you had, so you had, or if you had more sponsors, for instance, and if some of the topic would be very encouraging for some of the industry, so it could be like, for instance, for the plastic, because this is a big deal. And I guess that now, looking at all the different European grants or any environmental aspect, there is really a threat looking at all of those things. So it could be a really good call as well for the industry through university to do some research in Geneva, but maybe elsewhere as well. I know that, for instance, you have the Greenland and you have in Denmark for the glaciology. So they have a huge section as well where they're trying to analyze all of that. So to find ways to team up as well, maybe with those university, with the research, and trying to encourage as well the industry who has a win-win situation to find there. And we speak as well, for instance, in Sweden, wood and the industry of wood. So there could be some interesting as well call that we could more or less look at.
Well, in our case, in both expeditions, we were a case study for Norbit Subsea. They make this 3D multi-beamer to scan the sea bottom. And 3 years ago in 2018, they gave us really an experimental object that we had a lot of difficulty using, actually. We did do some research for them because we managed to make it work for 7 hours in a row around the area of the airship when it was lost, where it was lost. And instead of finding wrecks of the airship, we found the anchorage of ancient glacier of the last ice age, which was a geographical discovery. And for them, also this year, we were a case study because nobody ever scanned the sea bottom of Lady Franklin Fjord. For them, this was an amazing case study. Scientifically, and this is an industry based in Norway. It's a little bit older to be called a startup, but it definitely started as a startup. They're all young guys, the people we met them in Trondheim, actually they're based, and they gave us 2 sonars this year, plus the expert, because they work with university. Dansk University Poland works with this company in Trondheim, and they work by case studies to develop new instruments and more performant each time.
This is great. And I think this is really one way forward to try to look at more scientific case and potentially, again, connect light source, neutron source together with what you can do with getting all the sample as well. And all of that for the environmental cause. So I think it's
absolutely
really wonderful that they could be all those different developments.
Yeah, no, the Arctic is typically a place where there is interdisciplinarity is key for many reasons, and the contribution of, for instance, particle physicists. I did see that in Antarctica, for instance, where there was on board of the ship where I was, there was a laser to study the chemical composition of the atmosphere all along the crossing of the Ross Sea from New Zealand to Antarctica, to the continent. And the guy who built the instrument and was making it work on board was a physicist from the University of Florence. But then the data were used by environmental scientists and atmospheric chemists to understand how going away from the inhabited area like New Zealand towards Antarctica, which takes 11 days with a big icebreaker, how it changes with pollutants and contaminants by studying that with lasers. The other area where a lot of physicists work are, for instance, in geophysics and marine oceanography. They need a lot of people who are good at modeling data and making prediction models that function. And a lot of physicists migrate to that area. So that's another very interesting area. And there is interdisciplinarity, both for the instrument to understand the data, to process the data, innovate in instrumentation, and making it all work.
To complement, from the instrument point of view with the tests that you can do. So certainly, I mean, in Denmark with the geophysicists, I'll give you some link because they will be very interested with what you're doing as well.
Absolutely.
So this is really, really important. So do we have maybe more comment or question by Alan? I see that Alan asked the question about the quality of for the plastic side. So anything that you would like to add, Alan?
No, there is another question from him. I see here.
What has been the most
from
effective
Alan
communication tools for the public appreciation of the Arctic science? This is a very good question.
Yes. Okay. We developed, especially in 2018, which was a much bigger campaign, we developed communication tools that were specific for each audience. And I would say they were all effective because with this kind of content, especially if you are very regular and you communicate before, during, and after the expedition, you have really a following that is constant. So social media, we use them mostly for the general public. We posted blogs during the expedition with a lot of difficulty because we were using a satellite phone, which didn't work all the time to send text messages, but we complemented. And each time we were at the Italian base, for instance, or in Longyearbyen, we would inundate our social media team with content. We produced 2 documentaries, one for French TV, called Polarquest, Ushuaia TV, and the other for Italian TV, Focus TV, which is an Italian private TV, and both have won a lot of film prizes, adventure film prizes, scientific film prizes, and so on. And then I've been requested, while I was presenting the expedition at one of the many events where I was invited, I was requested by an Italian very famous publisher to write a book, which I'm still not finished writing, because writing a book is really enormous. If you go on the, for instance, on the Polarquest 2018 media page, you can see that we are still being covered for that. Okay, also thanks to this expedition, but it was really much more than expected how much we were followed. All the sponsors were doing their own communications based on us, from the ham, the Italian Parma ham and wine supplier, to the supplier of the entire navigation system on board, or to the instruments suppliers, Norbit, and even EEE, the Extreme Energy Events project of the INFN. Everybody communicated around us, so it created a synergy and an enormous multiplication effect. So the communication was all effective. The key was the storytelling of an adventure. So mixing science and adventure, and also being really riding the wave of these environmental subjects. Also, I guess, helped a lot. With the fundraising online, the Global Giving fundraising platform, we raised in 1 year $100,000 just on the plastic message. And with that, we could pay part of the expedition costs, but also pay a scholarship to a student who did the data analysis in the lab in La Spezia. So it was completely beyond expectations. I wanted to do something on the side, but then it took my life for a whole year at least. And this one was smaller on purpose because we didn't want to spend 1 year of our lives just on that, and in addition to working. But still, it takes every single moment of your day to organize such expeditions, because it creates also a chain reaction of publicity and interest and all the rest.
But which is positive is you know how to control it as well. So maybe you could plan to have 2 boats next time and to have people to help you as well. Potentially, you think that it's not good, so you would.
It's too early to ask. Ask in 6 months' time. Maybe we will get over, and then say yes, we do it again. But don't ask now.
So it has been extreme.
Let me finish the book of 2018 first, and then we talk about it.
But this is wonderful to simulate all those synergies as well. And as you say on Twitter, so I was following you as well. So when you were traveling, so it was like superb. And when you are in the warm place, cozy place, indeed, it's like changing so much from as well this COVID time when everybody was at home. So you gave as well the hope and the possibility to visit the world in that way. But most of all, indeed, to collect all the scientific information that are crucial for all of us. And how we can really try to contribute. So in different way and different case, I think that this is like collecting capacity that is fundamental. And this biodiversity as well. I guess that structural biology could be as well some kind of test and some kind of interest as well. And all the sampling that you have could be as well some important part for mapping everything. Yeah. So very, very impressive what you've done. So thanks a lot. So do we have more comment? Maybe Alan, you want to speak up?
Yes, I'll try. I was having trouble with my microphone. I have a less scientific question and more of a general interest one, I guess. It has to do with the polar bears.
That is for Mike, our expert.
Well, you know, here in New Mexico, we encounter these little black bears that are nothing compared to those white bears, but they're still very lethal, and they grab at least one person per year in the state of New Mexico. Well, the common deterrent is bear spray. And that wasn't mentioned.
Yeah, that's interesting. The bear sprays, I've looked at it as well. They also use it in Canada, but for some reason, the Norwegians and the Norwegian police representatives, they don't like it. So it's basically forbidden. So it's a bit of a contradictory situation where you're in, that they tell you on the island that the bears are protected and you should avoid conflict and things like that. But at the same time, they teach you to shoot, and they also give you a rifle, and they say, well, if it comes towards you, kill it. So it's, for me, was not fully satisfactory. I was talking about this. If you talk to the real experts, the people that are, for example, on the science base whole year round, they told us that most bears go away when you talk to them.
Yeah.
They just don't like it. You know, when you behave assertively, you stand up, you talk to them, they go away. The problem with the white polar bears is that they are unpredictable. Some of them may walk away, run away. Some of them may just completely ignore you, but others may decide that you are a meal and they may decide to attack you. So what they taught us, these guys, is that you should always have another means to escalate the situation more and more. So you should be able to make more and more noise or scare him more and more. And in fact, while we were visiting Nyalezund this year, the science base, which was just reopened because of COVID, or in fact, some of the guys, they had to stay there the whole year round. They had a adolescent bear that kept visiting them. And they, even with loud bangs and grenades and shooting in the air, at some stage, he didn't want to go away anymore. So the only means to escalate that was to get the helicopter from the governor. And with the helicopter and the noise of the helicopter flying low above him, finally managed to get rid of him. Maybe not forever. And in the worst case, they put him to sleep and they put him somewhere else on the island. But yeah, this it's a little bit contradictory. I would also have liked to have more tools, including bear spray too.
Yeah.
But then again, I mean, they have their policy. In 2018, we were basically arrested by the police locally because we published a little footage that I did with a drone following a bear, which is considered by them wildlife harassment. But I found a bear before going on land, so this prevented us from going on land and prevented any accident. Of course, in my enthusiasm as a drone pilot, I wanted to follow the bear for a few seconds at least, and then I gave up and I went away. The police considered this. In the end, they didn't fine us, but it shows a bit of a contradiction between protection and protection of yourself, but also the protection of the bear. So yeah, bear spray, for me, I would have taken it, but over there, for the moment, at least it's forbidden.
Yeah, no, that was an episode that is good that you mentioned that, because we were on the trial. When we arrived in Longyearbyen, triumphantly, having circumnavigated, we see these official authorities arriving. We said, oh, they're celebrating us. No, they wanted to arrest us. And they had seen a post that I just published on Facebook while arriving. And I also contacted the Svalbard University saying that every sighting of the bears, we sighted 7 bears in 2018. So every sighting I was describing the situations. And this time I said, okay, we saw it from the tender that there was a bear on this island, Storoya, which was very far north. Again, on the 81st parallel. And we were supposed to land because one of the scientists we met wanted to find a probe that was lost from the North Pole, and the last emission of this probe was from that island. And then we saw this bear. We suspected from 500 meters, it was a bear, it was mimetized. It was among white driftwood and very flat on land, looking at us. It had been looking at us since the moment we left the boat to the tender and trying to go on land. And then while the skipper was preparing shoot a flare, Mike immediately took the drone and went to see. And the bear stood up and came closer. And then he saw the drone and he just turned and didn't run away. He just walked away. And every 3 steps, he was looking at the drone. So that was the footage that we published. And then they said, take that footage out. This is disturbance of the fauna. And it's forbidden, blah, 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 blah. And we said, look, if we hadn't flown the drone, we would have landed and then an accident would surely happen. And in consideration of this, we were not fined, but we were warned. And they said, next time we catch you doing that, then you will be fined. So it's a bit contradictory because drone is a perfect way of surveying the island before landing because they hide.
And we see a lot of those drones and way as well of capturing and understanding where the animals are living, how they are living, and then even for everything. But maybe it was the authorization, maybe the request before.
No, they just don't want us. There is a fine. No, it's a contradictory regulation.
It's a question of protocol. They have a certain protocol, but the protocol is a bit harsh since it only talks about awareness, chasing the bear away, and then shooting it. There's nothing in between. So that was a bit coming back to the question of Alan about this bear spray. For me, I told them, and maybe they're more tolerant this time, that the drone is a good intermediary. Most bears don't like the drones, so why not use the drone to have a look? And in worst case, if it comes closer to you, use it to chase it away. I mean, the worst thing that can happen is people not chasing bears away. That was what the locals told us too. If you see a bear at 100 or 200 meters, just shoot a flare, they say. It should never get used to us. It should never become curious. It should never become closer. If a tourist boat, one of the little cruise ships that you see from time to time there, okay, this year we didn't see many, but if they go on land or they leave some food or they wait for an opportunity to get close to take pictures, the next boat that arrives, the bear is curious and wants to get even closer. So it's a kind of a situation that should be avoided. But yeah, it's all based also on protocols and on rules. So I think it can be improved, and it will, but yeah, there's no ideal perfect solution.
Yeah, and this is like a multicultural aspect as well, in one sense, or multi-society, because there, as you said, you have the Dutch, you have the Russians, or you have how to make it like everybody agreeing in one clear protocol for what is happening.
Yes, you have the locals, you have the scientists, so the people that are a bit more aware, but you also have some relatively unexperienced tourists. They, of course, usually go with guides, with boats, but these guides have different interests. They want the tourists to see the bear. So they intrinsically want people to be closer. While if you're with the local people or between us, when we saw a bear at 500 meters, we would not approach it. Even though as a photographer, I'm itching to see it from closer. If it doesn't happen naturally, just say no, just leave it. Just let it go its course. Yeah. It's contradictory, but it's at the same time very interesting. It's part of the experience that you have in the Arctic.
Exactly, or have a big binocular, so to take some really good pictures as well and shoot, but in a far distance. Huh?
Yeah, but they can swim, you know, on a sailboat like that, they can climb on the boat, they can do whatever they want.
Yeah,
So this is one of the things.
Yes.
In Greenland, last year, we had an experience when we were, all the crew was outside on the boat, on Nanook, and we were looking for a girl who was attached some GoPro on the mat, and someone paying attention on the water, he saw a bear at 5 meters from the boat, swimming in the water. So because he like a predator to surprise you, when everyone turned back and saw him, he decided to go on the beach. But we don't know what could have happened if we never saw him. And he decided to go on the beach. And on the beach, he went, he hid behind a small bump, and he waited 15 minutes. He get back and he came back to hide. So if you do not have this kind of security protocol, it could be really
And we saw another bear swimming just after he dived in the fjord, in Lady Franklin Fjord. While we were entering another fjord, Bokfjorden, we saw an enormous bear swimming away from the fjord, and we thought it was two bears from a distance because the length was just amazing. But I said, yeah, it's two heads, one after the other. No, it was the same animal swimming away from the fjord. He looked at us, but he was for sure very, very satisfied because that beach was full of seals. So he must have had a great meal lasting for the whole week. And then he was just going away, looked at us, and then he just went away.
The feeling is very particular because...
Yes, especially for him who had been in the water.
Because you really want to see a bear when you arrive in this in Arctic, but after a moment you don't want. So it starts to be strange. It's really the main attraction and the most dangerous things that could happen. So you really don't want to cross a bear on land.
It's contradictory all the time. I mean, we were always on land doing the bear watches with the rifle on our back. But you really don't want to see a bear. You don't want to encounter a bear, not just for your own risk, because that after a while you kind of also get used to that idea, but you also don't want to harm a bear.
True.
I could not imagine, for example, having to shoot a female bear. And then what do you do with the little ones, for example? So it's really horrible. You really, really want to avoid this.
Yeah, so that's something not to have then. But there are also other animals, I guess the orchids, you had some other animal that could be a danger as well, the horseback.
Much less. I mean,
walrus.
Walrus, yes, they could damage the boat or damage especially the inflatable boat, the tender, but they don't attack usually walruses. The only one that really attacks is the polar bear. We saw on the last day an enormous quantity of whales,
fin whales
that were so harmoniously jumping in and out of the water around the boat. They were completely like that, and they were enormous. They were bigger than the boat, but the water didn't move. They were so so harmonious, so in harmony with nature that I was saying we should imitate them. We do not have to invade nature, but just living harmoniously with it. That was the amazing final message of the whole expedition.
Yeah, we don't have that many images because at that moment I decided that watching those, no, forbidden, because we were too close to Longyearbyen, which is an airport, and I couldn't fly. But also from a photography point of view, I suddenly decided that I wanted to enjoy and not always sit behind the camera. But there is another contradiction. Sometimes as a photographer, it's a difficult position sometimes. You want to get the image, you want to see through the camera, but you also want to enjoy what you're seeing. So, but in that particular case, we did not have the images, or not.
Well, we do,
but not the good images.
But this is phone shot. Not have been great, but this is sharing with the audience. This is sharing with us. But you can tell us this is as good as
we tell you that it was wonderful.
No, but there is a post. There is a post on Instagram with these whales. You can see one jumping, and it's really enormous.
Yeah, and then so in our planet, for instance, they have some very natural data as well that they managed to get as well with the harmony of the nature, as you said. So not to disturb this harmony as well between human and nature. We need really to best monitor it.
We need to learn from them.
Learn from the nature, and get this harmony. So back, not only CP relation, but then as well the harmony of the nature. This is what high energy physics can bring. And science together. So thank you so much for all this time so that you provided to us for sharing this wonderful expedition. And we will so stay in touch, as we said, so next year. So we will know a bit more for the cosmic ray. So all the different measurements.
And also the other side.
The other side for the EDNA, that will be very, very exciting. And then to see as well, if there is any proposal or scientific case that could be interesting, I would still, maybe even if you don't go next month or next year on the next expedition, to gather all of that. You can send it to us. So we have the email up there and we will collect and we will try to see, and indeed to have more sponsors. For you, I think it would be certainly one of the best possibilities. So gathering, but there is so much that can be done indeed. So let's hope that you will have much more editions still. So you're still super young. So there's before retirement, especially in Switzerland, like much more expedition to plan. And we will so know more next year. So about your result. And in the meantime, so I will simply pass as well. So sharing my own screen, showing so the next physics matter. Which will be happening so for December, so that will be the last this year, and it will be so to come back as well to the case of Palestine, where we had on the 28th of October, so Professor Galeb Natou presenting the building capacity for Palestine in terms of so education and research and innovation. So we will have in our next edition, so which will be really soon, so the 8th of December. So because at the end of the year, we know that there is a lot of celebration time. So we want to have a possibility to close this series in 2021 early. And so Professor Maya Aboussar will present the higher education in Palestine, and we will have after that so a forum by some really prestigious speaker who will then get the possibility as well to give their insight into the situation as well in Palestine and how we can as well potentially build up different capacity there. So we will have Professor Erkan Halp from Argonne National Lab, so which is where there is as well the photon source, so the advanced photon source, the engineer without board president, so Bernard Amadi, Zafra Lerman, who is the Malta Conference Foundation president, Galeb Natou himself, so the director of the Yulish Institute, who will come as well, following as well a seminar that was happening on the 16th of November, so as he was mentioning in his presentation on the 28th of October. So that way we will have a free point to map how this capacity can be built in the Sesame with students from Palestine being trained in in Germany, and getting the possibility for fostering as well more science and using beam time in the Sesame. And with a Kate show as well, that I think you know as well. So from the Physics Without Frontier, which is so from the ICTP, so one organization very dynamic, and Kate has as well a lot of insight into the Palestinian world. So we are looking forward to have you there as well. And so the footage as well from today should be available soon, directly from an automatic distribution, and then later on YouTube. And so for the case of our friend today, so we will meet them next year, so finishing the year that way, and having the possibility to get more into this physics matter. So I finished this presentation on that note, so wishing you the best, and hoping to see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.